After centuries of searching, Azek Ahriman, Arch-Sorcerer of Tzeentch, has finally found a lead. Exiled from his legion, the Thousand Sons, after he accidentally turned a huge portion of his Space Marine brothers to dust, he has been seeking a cure for his failed spell. And now, finally, on a remote planet with red sands, a base inhabited by the Ultramarines holds the artifact he needs. He must take his forces, the subservient Zangors and the few Rubric Marines that remain loyal to him, and capture it if he has any hope of saving his legion. The scanner beeped and flashed in Lieutenant Camoran's face. It indicated the presence of some sort of ship, a warp ship, which meant chaos, traitor marines, or demons. Something was coming, most likely to seize the arcane artifact that was held in one of their several outposts on the planet. Camoran turned to his sergeant and his dreadnought, and prepared to give the order to move out. They would stop this. It's an intro, yeah. Now, this is just one of several outposts that the Ultramarines have on this planet, so it does take them a little while to get here. So they're pulling up at the right side of the screen, while the Thousand Sons are assaulting from the left. And yeah, I'm not going to use actual in-lore cardinal directions. I don't care that much. Also, the control points are a little hard to see, but there's one on top of the building. There's one exactly parallel to that on the opposite side of the board. There's one next to the building on the ground. And there's one just behind the cup. And we're just using dice since we're pretty low budget and I haven't had the time to 3D print anything better. I'll let Past Me explain how the scoring works.
Objective is secure and sweep. If you control an objective marker at the end of your command phase, you keep controlling that even if you move off it until someone else moves onto it. Okay. The other thing, victory points are ordered as follows. Capture and control at the end of each player's command phase. The player whose turn it is controls 10 victory points if they control one or more objective markers, if they control the objective marker in their opponent's deployment zone, or if they control more objective markers than their opponent does. So you can get up to 30 points per turn.
Now, this can seem complicated if you're not a Warhammer person, but I'm going to break it down very simply and very fast. Basically, each of the dice represents a control point. When your models are close enough to a control point, 3 inches, they get victory points. In this mode we're playing, you can get 30 victory points per round, and we're playing 3 rounds, and you don't score on the last, meaning the maximum a side can get is 60 victory points. And basically, whoever has the most victory points at the end wins. I put my Zangors, these pretty squishy birdmen that serve Tzeentch, right behind the cup to gain that control point early. Cameron places his dreadnought in between the building and the power coupler, while his lieutenant hides in the corner, taking the other control point on his side. I put my significantly more useful Rubric Marines in a little plus formation at the edge of the building, barely under cover from Cam's dreadnought, while he does the same with his squad of 5 Primaris intercessors. I make sure Ahriman's safe behind the cup, and we're off to the races. As the attacker, I'm moving first. No one has anything to do in the command phase, so it's straight on to the movement phase. The 6 phases, for those who don't know, are command, movement, psychic, shooting, charge, melee, and morale. I move my Zangors up the 6 inches they can move. Normally this would mean they wouldn't be holding that back point anymore, but we're playing a special mode that means until someone on the enemy team moves onto a point, you still have it. Also, Ahriman's there, but that's not really relevant to the special rule. My rubrics skirt forward around the edge of the building. They're just devastating enough at close range that I think it's worth it getting them inside of the dreadnought if I can fix those intercessors between the targeting sights of a warp flamer. I move Ahriman up purely so that he can hit the dreadnought with his spells, but I don't move him that far. He's my warlord after all, and I need to keep him protected as much as possible. On to the Psychic phase. Thousand Sons are known for being very powerful in the Psychic phase, as they have a lot of Psykers and a lot of pretty powerful spells. I get 4 spells per turn, which may not sound like a lot, but for a game this size, it's a pretty big amount. My sorcerer fizzles, but Armon's able to take 6 wounds off the Dreadnought with Doombolt and a subsequent smite, and he also makes the Rubric Marines harder to hit with Glamour of Tzeentch. All in all, pretty successful. Next up is the shooting phase. Thousand Suns aren't quite as good at this as they are at Psychic phase, but they are still pretty decent with their Warp Flamers and Soul Reaper cannons. In fact, Soul Reaper cannon is the only thing in range, so I take pot shots at the Dreadnought, and I'm able to reduce it to 5 total health. Cameron, however, rolls miraculous boxcars, saving his mech from being damaged anymore this turn. And since I'm not close enough to charge in or enter melee, that means it is now Cameron's turn. He just barely nudges his Dreadnought forward and then brings his Primaris Intercessors up to support it. They're literally touching bases. His Lieutenant stays in the corner to keep that one control point under, well, control. And with no psychic spells, he proceeds to fire his Dreadnought's many guns at my poor forces. He hits most of his shots and knocks off 2 Zangor, which honestly is not as bad as it could have been, but I need to stop that thing from getting into melee, because that Power Fist can do some real damage to Ahriman. After switching dice boxes, his one remaining weapon is able to do 1 damage to Ahriman, so now it's even more dire that I keep him away. After all 5 of his Marines whiff against mine because of Glamour of Tzeentch, thank you, Ahriman, his shooting phase is over, since his lieutenant can't hit anyone, and he's not in range to charge, and he's not in range to melee, meaning it's my turn again already. This is gonna be fun. It's the end of round 1, and since this is a 3-round game, we're already a third of the way through. It's going pretty quickly. Moving their maximum, my Zangors move up so that they might be able to charge the Dreadnought later this turn. They're decent in melee. They're probably gonna get curb stomped, but they might be able to take a few wounds with them. I move my Rubrics up to take full advantage of those Warp Flamers. They're pretty dang good. And I also throw Ahriman right in between the 2 squads. It's round 2, all or nothing. In my Psychic phase, my Sorcerer gets off a Smite, dealing 2 damage to the Dreadnought, and Ahriman deals 3 more with Doombolt, which is unfortunately not shown in the video because my editing is really weird. That brings it down to 2 health. However, I choose to show mercy, and Ahriman directs his other 2 spells at the Primaris Intercessors, killing 2 of them. And that is my Psychic phase. Ahriman whiffs with his Inferno Bolt pistol, but my Rubric Marines turn their violet gout-spouting weapons of mass destruction, their Warp Flamers, on the Noble Intercessors, hoping to reduce them to slag. That was a pretty good line. They kill the 2 that are not the Sergeant, leaving Cameron with 3 models, his Dreadnought, his Sergeant, and the Lieutenant that has done absolutely nothing all game. With no other choice, he concedes and gets his models off the board. They flee from the lost base as the Thousand Suns seize the valuable relic. The Thousand Suns sat victoriously in their newly captured base, the Zangors hooting and warbling with malicious glee, the Rubrics standing still as the arcane automata they were. The aspiring sorcerer brought Ahriman the artifact, and he examined it. This was an object of incredible arcane power, one that would take a long time to decipher. But perhaps they did not have the time. Something was on the horizon, something that wanted the artifact, and they would need to fight another battle before the day was out. To be continued.